Return on experiences is a buzzword these days, and everyone in the corporate world is talking about this and making efforts to improve ROX for the customers and people. In such a scenario, it becomes imperative to explore the true value of experiences of luxurious residential properties. Have you ever wondered why do these homes come equipped with everything from state-of-the-art gyms to lavish spas and breathtaking views? Is one place of living just a property, or is there something more profound at play? Can the place we call home truly impact our performance at work? What is the connection between one's place of living and the elusive concept of return on experience? Today we have the privilege of discussing this fascinating topic with a personality who understands the value of money and experience like no other. A seasoned insurance professional with over 2 decades of experience, Mr. Sumit Rai is the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of Edelweiss Tokio Life Insurance. Throughout his years in various leadership roles, Mr. Rai has led and mentored several cross-functional teams, enhancing organizational value and growth. Thank you so much, sir, for making time for the show today.
My pleasure, Italia. Good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Sir, having been a leading name in the corporate world today, how do you look at this concept of return on experience?
So it's an interesting experience, the whole concept of return on experience. People of my generation have grown up with concepts like return on investment.
Yeah.
Experience is very different from that. But if I look at what we typically call in our business as input and output, then in some senses, return on investment is the output that you get if you invest in return on experience, right? So that's, I think, the important part that I think we should keep in mind. The other thing that I think people also forget kind of a little bit is that we often define experience with the customer, right? So what is the customer experience? How's the customer transaction? How easy is it? How frictionless is it? So on. But always an important input into that customer experience is the employee experience. How satisfied is the employee? How committed is the employee? How important does he feel is it to give the customer a good experience? Right? The employee is the provider of experience in this case. And that's for the more traditional industry. And for an industry like ours, which is life insurance, distribution is a very important part of it. Our distributors, while not employees, are a very important component of delivering that experience. So even the distribution experience, and what we call DX in our business, is very, very important. So how do you create, for example, ease of doing business for the distributor? How do you create appropriate technologies as well as techniques for him to be able to deliver the right experience to the customer is also very, very important. So so emerging field, 3 components, very distinct components, distinct measures, distinct matrices. But given the way consumers are in India, how aware consumers are in India, and how demanding consumers are in India, I think it's going to be always. We want the best at the lowest, right?
Yeah,
that's just who we are. So I do believe that return on experience is something we're going to see become a lot bigger because it will drive things like profitability and return on investment in the future.
You know how beautifully you explained return on investment was the focus, but it is dependent on return on experience as well, as you've quite explained. I want to know why this importance to ROX has come up now. Is it a buzzword now only, or it was picking up to come to this space where in business world it is important now?
I think what has become over the period of time with the introduction of things like technology and all, managing friction, reducing friction has become very, very important. How do you create a seamless transaction for a customer is very, very important. And I think a lot of it has to do with e-commerce. Because if you go and see what people like Amazon have done or Flipkart have done over so many years, is to try and reduce the friction in the journey at every stage. How can you do the most with the least amount of clicks is, let's say, how they describe it. And I think every other business has kind of learned from those experiences. Some businesses have always had a high value on experience. Airlines, for example, is always a high experience business,
it's experience
right?
Driven,
if you don't like the service of an airline, you don't like to travel on it. But then those high experiences with businesses are increasingly becoming about providing the best experience at the lowest cost, whereas experience overall, I think in our country and globally actually, is becoming a much more important metrics in terms of how do you make the journey seamless for the customer, and therefore retain the customer. Cost of customer acquisition is pretty high, right? So getting a customer in is one part of the equation, but getting the customer to stay with you is what customer experience management will kind of, will provide to you.
I always thought experience is very subjective, but now I can see how the subjective thing can be made objective through efforts.
Everything which is subjective in life can be converted into matrices and measured, is my belief. It has to be important enough for you to measure it. You will always find a way to measure it.
So now it is very important for me to give you an experience of the place we are
Absolutely.
in. Let me take you through the living space we are in, as it has an important role in the experience we create.
Absolutely.
So let's go ahead.
Sure.
So, living space has a very important role in life, where we spend most of our time. What are the essential things, if you have to tell me, in your living space that you think is a mandate and should be around in the choices you make for a living space?
First and foremost, a lot of sunlight.
Lot of sunlight.
I personally believe your living space should give you a sense of energy.
Okay.
If you're living, and I do believe that a lot of sunlight contributes to energy. Okay. So for me, one of the key things is, I'm not so much of a Vastu person or whatever. I don't really care about so much. But I do believe that the house, as soon as you walk in, it should give you a sense of energy.
Seems like you're also a morning person.
I am.
Yeah.
I am an early morning person. I love to see the sunlight, the first sunlight and so on. So yeah. But what do you feel when you walk in? Do you feel jaded? Or does getting into the house after a long day at work make you feel rejuvenated? I think to me that is very important, and as long as that can be sorted, that's one part of it. And I think, then a lot of things. How do you furnish the house? What gives you more comfort? How's the lighting like? I think lighting is something which is underestimated.
Yes.
I see a lot of, these are very fancy lights, but they don't necessarily serve the right function, which is to provide energy to the house.
Nowadays, people have started focusing on different, like warm lights. So
Absolutely. And so lighting, like I said, to me, lighting, sunlight plays a very important role in what is the vibe of the house, what is the vibe, what is the energy that the house creates. Yeah. So that to me is very important. The rest, the size and all are okay. That doesn't matter as much. But that the house should give you a sense of joy, a sense of energy is, I think, very important, because that's where you spend time with your family. That's where you spend a good 8, 10, 12 hours of your day every day. Right? And if you come out of that jaded, then the rest of the life is also jaded.
Wow. So can I get a glimpse to understand where do you spend your maximum time in your living space? As I assume it is all lit up.
So like I said, I prefer a lot of sunlight.
Yeah.
So during daytime, there's hardly any lights in the house. It's all sunlight.
It's all natural light.
It's all natural light. I live a little bit higher. So it's all natural light, and we have a nice terrace. So a lot of the time is on the terrace. Sitting there, morning, evening. The terrace, thankfully, is large enough so I can do my workout and all also there. So a lot of my time is in the living room or in the terrace. Yeah. And then the rest of the time is...
So I think I can also sense there, you're a very stress-free personality, looks like that. So with the kind of living space experience you were talking about with your choices, how much does it add to your mind space, keeping you stress-free as you appear? How does this work for you?
See, my belief is stress is a part of your life.
Okay.
You are not going to be able to get away from stress. I think the answer lies in saying, how do you manage the stress?
How do you manage?
Right. But that, I think, is the important part. And like you were saying, I think a good living space helps in managing that stress. Like I said, if your house gives you a certain sense of energy, a certain sense of peace, a certain sense of calm, I think it helps you to manage that. I don't know, the way I see it, I try and pack my stress at work. Once I leave work, I try and not think about work too much and stay away from it. It's not always possible, not humanly possible all the time. You can't be, you can't live your life in drawers like that. Yet, this is the work drawer and this is the life drawer. It doesn't really happen. Yeah, but you have to make an effort at it. I think over a period of time, if you practice, you can get a little bit better at it.
Here I want to understand, being a corporate leader, the word leader comes in play. how can we understand managing stress in the way you're explaining? Because a leader is always on the front foot, taking the entire workforce ahead.
So, like I said, I think to me, one of the cardinal principles is knowing what is it that I control and what I don't control.
Okay. So you're very clear on your
If
thoughts.
I can take stress about what I control, right?
Okay.
Because I can make a difference to that. What I can't control, I try not to take too much stress about it.
You have a let go attitude towards it.
Yeah, if it is not something that I'm able to influence or control beyond a point of time or beyond a point of effort, it's okay. It's better to let go and focus on the thing that you can control, at least get those that you can control in order. Hopefully the others will follow, is the way I look at it.
But in order to manage your workforce, to get the real satisfaction, do you really have to work hard there, or this technique works good over there as well to get the best of them? Make sure
I
they
think
are stress-free.
with people it's very different. And very often I think managing stress at workplace becomes a lot about what I think are some superficial things, where yoga kara do, and you do all of these, do fun at work activity and all. But
The
I do.
HR activities they do.
So there's nothing wrong with those. But I do believe that the core at work is always work. How do you create an environment in which people can do their work successfully and get the fulfillment out of their work? You know, if at the end of the day you feel you did a good day's work, you were able to do something today, you were able to contribute something today, I don't think anything gives anybody more joy. My fundamental belief in life is nobody wants to fail. Everybody wants to succeed, right? I haven't met anybody who wanted to fail, right? If people can succeed, then they feel happy. If people can succeed, then there's joy and there is lesser stress. So how do you enable people to succeed at your job? Whether it's through training, on job, and all of that is, I think, important. And if they're doing well at their work, I think the other things, the fun at work and everything else that we do at work, like I said, they're all important. That element then adds on to managing the stress better. But if you're not succeeding at your work, how can you be stress-free? No matter what, I can't go play cricket and become stress-free if I'm not doing well at work, right?
So you're saying return on experience even at a workplace for your workforce is not limited to only the activities that can be done to make them superficially feel stress-free, but a lot has to do with
my fundamental belief in life is teach people to do their job well. If they do their job well, they will experience joy out of it. And that joy does more to manage stress than anything else.
Wow. So there's also a return of experience created
Absolutely.
in the workforce. It's just
Absolutely.
not limited to the hardware that the
Absolutely.
corporate head has to take it out.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking us through that. Now I want to understand a little more on the insurance space and how you run the business to get that experience.
Okay.
So now talking about the insurance industry, something very close to you, very long time there. How do you look at ROX or return on experience fit in the insurance space?
So for us in insurance, I think ROX is a very, very demanding concept. Okay. And let me put it why, especially life insurance. I haven't met anybody who woke up one morning and said, I want to buy life insurance today. Never. Okay. You might get up and say, I want to buy a house, I want to buy a car, I want to do this. Insurance, nobody wants to wake up and say, I want to buy insurance today, right? So insurance is therefore an evoked need. Somebody needs to sit across you and help you understand why you need insurance. When people understand, then it becomes important for them. But by and large, it's not something that they think of every day. So experience in our business is essentially about three pillars.
Okay.
The first pillar is processes. How do you create a standardized experience for the customer every single time? It's by following a certain set of processes. That is what will
It should not be hassling and
So you just figure out that journey.
okay.
How is the journey? From let's say, if a customer calls my call center, what is the journey like? What could he ask? What are the typical queries? How do we give the answer? Are we giving the full answer or not? And so on and so forth, right? So processes is one part. The second part is training. If I've got these processes, my people, whether they're distributors or employees, have they been trained well enough to be able to use these processes and leverage them fully, right? And the third part of it, which is a lot more true today than it was even 10 years ago, that's technology. How are you leveraging technology in order to be able to create that experience? A lot of customers today are really in a very do-it-yourself mindset, right? DIY seems to have become very important for people. A lot of people don't want to talk to somebody.
They don't want anyone entertaining or.
I don't want to talk to somebody. I don't want to,
question
go and talk to an IVR and stuff
not
like
even a
that.
recorded voice for
Not even a recorded voice. So they don't want it, right? So then how do you create that experience for them? If their experience on that front is, say, derived from, let's say, an Amazon, okay? Then they're looking at something similar from us.
No.
That hasn't been our experience in the past. That's not something that we are very good at. So it has
insurance
to.
industry has to match itself to the experience
That's
given
what I'm
in
saying.
e-commerce
That is not
industry.
something that we've traditionally been good at. And so therefore, that's the journey that we are learning. In how do we create that experience for the customer using technology? It has its big upsides. And if you can leverage it well, obviously it has a significant impact on ROI. But it's a learning curve.
So you think experience can actually help in the insurance industry getting the right ROI?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
So this
We
is
are
the
essentially.
missing link you think you had for so long?
I don't think it was a missing link.
Yeah.
I just think it was never as explicit in its importance as it is today. These three pillars have been there forever. I've been in the industry for 20 plus years now,
Yes.
right? The three pillars were always there. But how do you leverage the three pillars to create experience, and how do you marry the customer journey to these? These are a lot more explicit today than it used to be maybe 10, 15 years ago.
So now I want to understand, because you're a business person, a corporate leader, so let us experience the business center here and continue our conversation.
All right.
Understand more.
Absolutely.
So now that we are sitting in the business center, let us talk some business stuff.
Sure.
The real business steps that you have taken for your organization to improve the ROX, that is the return on experience in your company. Could you just help us understand?
As I was saying earlier, three pillars: process,
Training.
and technology.
Yes.
Process and training is something that we've been working on for a very long period of time. It's part of what we've done since the inception of the company 10, 12 years ago. I think what we've done a lot of lately is around how do we improve the experience from a technology standpoint. Because that is where I think a lot of the customer expectations today are. A lot of customers, like I said, you don't do it yourself. They don't want to interact with anybody. So those expectations today are very different. Traditional businesses like ours, life insurance has been around for 200 plus years. We've struggled, quite honestly, to cope with it at different points of time. But I think for us specifically, for Edelweiss Tokio Life, I think we spent a lot of time in terms of just trying to make sure how can we use technology to help that interaction between the seller and the buyer become easier, smoother. So for example, today, when you buy life insurance, and this is the transition that I've seen within 20, 25 years that I've spent in the industry. It used to take 7 days to issue a policy in 2001, 2002 when we started, right? Today we issue a policy in 30 minutes.
So you can imagine the...
There is no paper in the journey today. The entire thing is completely seamless and digital, right? A distributor can take a customer on a call and walk him through the process in 5 minutes flat, right? These are things which I think sound very fancy, but actually for today's customer, they're almost hygiene. I don't think a customer today wants to sit and sign 8 pages. They're not the least bit interested, right? And if you don't do some of these things, you will not have customers, right? So I think that's at the purchase stage. At a post-purchase stage, how do you, a lot of customers in our business, even for service, go back to the distributor,
Okay.
right? So how do you provide everything to the distributor that when the customer calls, the distributor is empowered enough to tell the customer that, look, this is your current policy status and so on and so forth, and then what you need. You want to change an address? Let me help you right now.
So it doesn't need to go through a
So it
cumbersome
doesn't
process.
need to go through a very long process. And when that happens, the distributor is empowered in front of the customer. The customer has even more belief in the distributor, right? So those are things where we've invested and we'll continue to invest a fair bit of money. And in the, like I said earlier, the do-it-yourself experience of the customer. How do we make that simpler? How do we make that easier? That is where a lot is happening. But what will happen, therefore, is that as you walk this trajectory, everything that you've done in your processes and your training earlier will also have to adjust and adapt and amend as we go forward.
So it is a continuous process
It's a continuous
of
process of cycling. You
transition
keep doing this, these things change, then you have to rewrite the processes again to say, how do I take advantage of this? Technology is evolving. Every day
And
the new
so the
platforms.
speed with which technology is evolving, I think that force, it has increased in fold. if earlier technology was upgraded in 10 years, now I think in every 6 months you can see
Yeah,
a
absolutely.
change in
Every
the
6 months
transition.
I'm seeing a new platform coming in which is so much better than what was there, and new experiences we created. Look, I truly believe that what we've seen in India over the last 5-6 years has been, and the digitalization of the economy, the UPI, Aadhaar, and all of this, everything that is happening. I think we're cutting edge. We're
Yes.
better than anywhere else in the world. I go abroad and I find everybody so
Yeah.
primitive now as compared to where we are.
Yeah.
Right? Except maybe to the exclusion of China, which is also
Yes.
fairly advanced. China and some of the other Southeast Asian countries. So, I think all businesses, not just our businesses, but all businesses have to learn to get better at using technology, making technology the bedrock of the processes they're training. Rather than it being earlier, it used to be, I will lay down the process, then I will teach people how to train, and technology will then exist to fulfill this process. And I think that cycle is getting reversed.
Just one small understanding on that part is how much of training for the customers you have to do, because they're going on a DIY mode. So you have to train them also to experience it better.
It's very interesting. I'm sure you use Uber.
Yeah, I
Right.
still do it.
Who trained you to use Uber?
I think my friends would look around,
It's very intuitive. Right?
just got, yeah.
It's very intuitive. You don't need too much training to understand how to run a Uber or a Swiggy or an Amazon, right? In any of these platforms, nobody trains
These
you.
are adaptive.
These are adaptive. And the UX, the user interface, the user experience is so simple that your grandmother can also do it. She's also very comfortable
So
doing
this
it. Right?
is not going to be a challenge on their part that I
So
don't know how to use.
increasingly, I think your technology, you also have to think through like that.
Wow.
That I have to design it in such a way that the customer doesn't need training.
And
That the
that's
customer
that.
can just look at it and intuitively know what to do. In financial services, highly regulated businesses, all of this is necessarily a little bit more cumbersome, a little bit more difficult to manage. And so there is some degree of education that is required. And that, by the way, is also a great way to engage customer.
Yes.
If I can create enough content, educative content, it helps the customer live a better
Yes.
life. So to me, that is also part of the experience. So that is
experiential
I suspect
awareness.
where we'll end up going next.
So now that we're sitting in the business center, how do you find a correlation between your, living space, whether your living space at your home or your workplace, has a direct or a correlated impact on your productivity? Personally,
That's
also
a-
share an anecdote if you have.
That's an interesting one. And I think it changes from city to city. is
Okay.
my realization, right? So when you are, for example, in Bombay,
Yeah.
right? It matters whether you're on the central line or the harbour
Okay.
line. Where are your employees coming from? If one
Yeah.
of your employees are on a particular line, then you plan your office accordingly.
Yes.
Do you provide pickup from the station and so on and so forth, right? So those things become important, and those are part of what is the employee experience.
True. In getting to the
in-
workplace and
absolutely. In
how their
getting to
mood
the
stays
workplace.
intact.
How comfortable is it to get to the workplace
Yes.
and to get back to work, right? So that I think is extremely important. But if you are in, say, a place like Delhi, the central line and the harbour line gets
Yeah.
replaced with the metro station and so on.
The connectivity is good.
Connectivity is very important. Increasingly, people live further and further away from office.
Yes.
Very few people actually have the luxury of being able to stay close to office, right? I think the other thing that is happening is, and it is still fully to play out, is how hybrid work evolves,
Yes.
right? So how many days are you going to be in office? How many days are you going to work? I think one of the big things that COVID has done is broken this myth that you only need to be in office in order to be able to work. But it has downsides in terms of employee connectivity, innovation and stuff like that. I think those things suffer. How do you find that balance is going to be the other big thing that will define what work experience will look like for people. At the end of the day, I strongly believe that work is not just transaction. Work is about belonging. You personally work best when you feel you belong to a place, when that place gives you that little bit of charge of saying,
That energy, that vibe.
yeah. And you don't belong if you don't know your colleagues. Yeah, you don't belong if you don't know what the organization stands for. And to get some of that, you have to come to office.
True.
Culture is very hard to transmit over Teams or Zoom. Right? Culture is what you feel in interaction with people.
Yes.
And also, I think we are in a phase where we are evolving. I think we are discovering new rhythms of working.
There's this entire battle about come to office 5 days a week and so on and so forth versus hybrid versus
Yes.
work from home. I think all of these will coexist, and different businesses, I think, will use them differently depending on their need. Because look, even pre-COVID, there were businesses which had no offices. There were businesses where people were spread across the world. 30 people with this, each person in a different country, but all working together. So I think it depends on the nature of the business and how you do. All of that will be very interesting to watch. I think the next 5, 7, 10 years are going to be very interesting.
But before I let you go, one last very personal question. How much of the living space has an impact on your mood, your productivity, your contribution to your work, even though you love your work? But does that really play with you even today?
I do believe that your home's environment is very, very important.
Yeah.
Your home environment is what gives you the energy every day to then go at work and be super efficient and super energetic at work.
So it starts from the living space at home and then...
I think it's all a continuum. I don't think you can define between...
You cannot combat him.
This is house and this is work and all. Great work happens when all of this is a continuum and you're just moving seamlessly from one to the other.
Thank you so much, Mr. Rai. It was not just insightful, enriching, but very inspiring. I have been inspired through the conversation with you. Your aura personality is the living space for me right now. So thank you for extending that to me. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for making this show. And with that, we have come to the end of this episode. I hope you found the insights shared today as enlightening and inspiring as I did. As we conclude, remember that your place of living is much more than your address. It has the power to be a sanctuary of success and a heaven of productivity. This is Anku Goyal signing off from 25South, one of India's most luxurious living places where every corner exudes opulence and elegance. Wishing you all a productive and fulfilling journey ahead.